Hi, in this video we're continuing to look at the strategic level outputs that are available with the PromoPlanner 4, and to do that I'm going to use the strategic level database I created just a couple of videos ago. So this video is going to look at promotional ROI. So how do I get there? Well, like all the strategic view outputs, they're all available through here, the number 2 strategic view option. So I can click on that, and here is my menu, and there are all the outputs. And as I said, today we're going to cover promotional ROI. So here we are. So what have we got? Well, what we have is for the next 3 years, from the optimization year onwards, which is set to 2019 if you remember, we will have a calculation for the promotional ROI. So we're having 2019, we have 2020, and we have 2021. All of the outputs at the strategic level are automatically given to you for the next 3 years, and there's no exception here. So we have these little figures in white, and what we have here is the portfolio total promotional ROI. So if we have a quick look at that, we can see it's running at 285 in 2019, and it's declining a little in 2020, and then a little further in 2021. So this is the portfolio long-term promotional ROI. And of course that is dependent on the ROI of each of the products in your portfolio, and here they all are. There's 29 of them, and for each one of those we have the promotional ROI assessment for the next 3 years. So I mentioned a moment ago that this is the long-term promotional ROI, so I'm going to need to explain exactly what that is. So to help me explain, I've created a little chart on the whiteboard behind me. Hopefully you can see this. So we're going to look at this expression, which is long term, and what it means. Now in the PromoPlanner 4 we use a long-term definition which is 5 years long. Now that's a little unusual. Most sales response systems might use a 2-year or a 3-year definition for long-term, but the PromoPlanner uses a 5-year definition, and that has various advantages which I'll leave to another video to describe to you. So what does this actually mean? Well, it's 5-year long-term, but more precisely it really should be described as the year of investment plus 4 years of carryover. That's how it really should be described. Now, when the PromoPlanner is calculating, optimizing for you the best optimal promotional investment that you should be making in any 1 year, let's say 2019, it doesn't just look at the data that you have provided for 2019. It looks at the data you provided for the year of investment, 2019, and for the next 4 years. So year of investment of 4 years makes 5 years, which is why we refer to it as a 5-year long-term return. So as you can see in my chart, in order to determine the optimal investment for 2019, the PromoPlanner will look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of data. Now that's 2019, but as you can see on the various tables, you are going to get an output not just for 2019, but for the next 3 years, the 3 years after the year you've declared as the optimization year. So we're also going to get a result for 2020, and to get that result the PromoPlanner needs to look at the year of investment 2020 plus the next 4 years of carryover, and that takes us all the way up to 2024. So the PromoPlanner needs to have data to at least 2024 to give you the next 2 years of recommendation, but we give you 3, so the same thing happens. To calculate the optimal investment for 2021, we need to look at and review all the data you provided all the way up to 2025. And this explains why, when you provide all the data on our data templates, our time horizon will always have this many years in it. It will have the year of investment. There it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And in order to calculate the carryover, which takes us into the year of investment, we need 1 year of history. So we will always have a time horizon that has 8 years in it. So that's the definition of the 5-year long-term return basis, which the Promo Planner uses for all of its optimization. So that explains the 5-year long-term expression, but it doesn't explain how to calculate the promotional ROI itself. So let's do that. And to do that, I have yet another chart on my whiteboard. Here we go. So let me try and explain what's happening here. So we're going to calculate the promotional ROI, and we're going to calculate that for the year 2019, which is the optimization year in our database at the moment. So here we have an axis. We have sales going up this way, and let's imagine we have a product, and for that product the sales forecast for 2019 is going to be $120,000. So here it is. You can just see it there, my $120,000. Now the Promo Planner is splitting that $120,000 up between the carryover sales, which is down here in blue, which will be, let's say, 80,000, and the incremental sales, which will be the remaining 40,000, bringing the total to 120, and that incremental sales is being shown here in red. So that's our sales forecast of 120,000. But in that same year, in 2019, we made some promotional investment. We did some promoting. We used maybe some Salesforce, maybe some other channels. And let's say that the total of that investment in 2019 came to $50,000. So you can see right down the bottom here in green, we have $50,000 being, if you like, inserted into 2019, invested into 2019. So what's happening? Well, that promotional investment has effectively produced that 40,000 that we see up there. It doesn't produce the 80,000 because that has really come from the year before. That's the carryover sales. If we had not done this 50,000 promotion at all, then the Promo Planner is telling us that we should have expected sales in 2019 of around that 80,000. We would have had the carryover sales, but we would not have had any incremental sales. But we have made the investment of 50,000, and we have got the incremental sales of 40,000 in that year. So this is, if you like, the incremental sales belonging to the year of investment. But in the following year, 2020 in our example, we're going to get more carryover. And in fact, we're going to get carryover on the carryover from the previous year, 2019. And in my example here, you can see we're saying that we're going to get $32,000 being the carryover from the $40,000 carryover sales of the year before. So that's essentially the year of investment, the return. The 40,000 represents the return in the year of investment, and the 32,000 represents additional return in the first of the carryover years. So what the Promo Planner does is, because we're using this long-term definition, is it's looking at the year of investment plus 4 years of carryover. So here are the 4 years of carryover. 40,000 return in the year of investment, and then we have 32,000 return in the first year of carryover, 26 in the second, 21 in the third, and 17 in the fourth. So this $50,000 of investment is effectively driving all of these 5 portions of money, which comes in total to $136,000. $50,000. So that 50,000 is driving 136,000 of sales long term over the 5 years. Now, that's how we get to the 136. But this is our total sales forecast, and yes, we have carryover and incremental sales, but we have something else. We have cost of goods. That 120, and in fact this 136, is not all profit, if you like. It's not all money that we're going to get in the bank, because there is a cost of goods. So we have to take the cost of goods into account as well. So I'm going to assume in my example that the cost of goods for this product is 10%, and it stays at 10% for every year that we have in our example here. So here's my 10% cost of goods. So what is 10% of 136? Well, that's very easy to calculate. That's just 13.6. So if we're going to subtract the cost of goods from our 136 long-term return, we end up with a value of $122.4 thousand, and that is our 5-year long-term return net of our cost of goods. So if that's our return, what was our investment? Well, our investment was the 50 all the way back here. So let's take that return, divide it by the 50 of investment, and express this little division here as a percentage. And if we do that, we end up with 245%. So in my example here, the long-term return, promotional return on the initial investment is 245%. So now we know how to calculate promotional ROI, and we understand the 5-year long-term period on which it's based. So is that everything? Well, not quite, because once we have a result, 245% in the example I used a moment ago, how do we interpret that? Is that a good ROI? Is that a bad ROI? What does that actually mean? Well, to help with this, I should tell you a little story. Some years ago now, a very prominent firm who are pretty much the pioneers in things to do with sales response, they did a study of the most successful pharma companies with a view to understand exactly this question. They wanted to know what the long-term ROI ought to be for being successful in the pharma industry. Now, they did that study, and the result they came to was that those most successful companies had a long-term ROI in the region between 250 and 300%, somewhere in that range. 275, if you like, is the sort of midpoint between those two numbers. So that's what they did. So this study was done around this period of time, and that was the range in which they decided that pharma companies ought to be. Now, when this study was done, pharma companies were a little different than they are now. They tended to have very large portfolios, and they tended to be involved in all aspects of the pharma industry. They had specialist products, they had generic products, they had products being launched, they had products that had lost patent protection. So they were very, very mixed portfolios. So we should really consider this range of 250 to 300% ROI as being a valid, good, desirable, if you like, long-term ROI to have if you have a very mixed portfolio. But over the years, the pharma industry has changed a little bit, and pharma companies are becoming more distinct from each other. There are companies that are more generically based, and there are companies who are more kind of specialist or patent protected based. So what does that mean for our understanding of what a good ROI is? Well, if you have a portfolio which is predominantly specialist and patent protected, then typically you may have an ROI up in this kind of range. Okay, you have very profitable products, relatively little competition, and if you are selling specialist products, you may have relatively small specialist audience sizes to promote to. There are fewer opticians, ophthalmologists, and fewer oncologists than there are, let's say, general practitioners or family doctors. So there are simply less people to promote to. So the promotional costs are usually, often, much less, which helps your profitability. So for those organizations that are operating in the more kind of specialists market, let's call it, and let's say that they are largely patent protected, then it's possible to have a long-term ROI anywhere between about, let's say, 275 and maybe even up to 400-500% as a portfolio, and some individual products may go higher than that. But what about generic companies? Well, generic companies are a little different. They by definition have a lot more competition in their market, and they very often have a much larger audiences to promote to, so their costs might be higher, and with the competition the prices they can charge might be that much less, so they don't have quite the same margins as mixed portfolio and specialist portfolio companies might have. So what do? Well, they tend to operate in a range, maybe something like here. Let's call these generic portfolios, or largely generic portfolios, we should say. So we would expect them to be on the lower side. So an ROI of 180, 220, 240%, that kind of area is quite reasonable for a largely generic portfolio. So to answer this question, what is the right ROI? What is the good ROI? Is a very difficult question to answer because it really depends on the kind of organization that you are. What we need to do is run this exercise where we calculate the promotional ROI for maybe several markets in your organization and find out what is the kind of median value for your type of portfolio and where that fits in. And once you understand that, then you can decide whether you have markets that are doing better than others. And that's precisely why we have this strategic level planning within the Promo Planner. If you have 20 different companies or 20 different markets, let's say, that make up one of the regions for your organization, then it doesn't take very long at all to fill in 20 templates, one for each market, put them through the Promo Planner, and do this calculation very quickly to give you that promotional return on investment number. And then you can create a little league table of that and kind of find out which are the markets in your region that are doing better than the others, and kind of work out what the median value might be for promotional ROI in your market. So the only extra thing to say on this is this: if you have very high ROI, that might sound very desirable, but if you have a very high ROI, it could mean that you are under investing now and you might be putting future sales at risk. And if you are over investing, so you'd have maybe a relatively low ROI for your organization, then you might be leaving some money in the table. You might be investing that much too much and cutting your margins a little bit too fine, and you might be risking your future business in that way. So we need to look at that in the context of your organization to know exactly what how to interpret the promotional ROI number. But one thing we can say for all organizations is you definitely do not want to have a long-term promotional ROI of less than 100%, because less than 100% will definitely mean you're making a loss and you're not getting back the money that you are investing in promotion. So you'll see it's red here on my little chart. We definitely don't want that. 100% is your break-even point, and we definitely want to see a long-term return on investment higher than 100%. So that's it. That explains, I hope, a little bit about how we should interpret the promotional ROI number once we have that table. So going back to the promo planner itself, here is our promotional ROI table, and here we have it worked out for each individual product. And in this demonstration model here, I have a really very mixed portfolio. I've got all kinds of things. I've got some products that are very highly specialist. I have products here that have a lot of competition. I have launch products. I have products that are about to lose their patent protection. So I would definitely consider this a very mixed portfolio. And if we have a look at the ROI for the portfolio in total, the little white numbers up here, if you remember, we have 285, 279, 272, and that's very comfortably in my 250 to 300% range. So it would suggest that my investment is really quite good, my current plan. And this is essentially an assessment of the current plan. It's an assessment of the data that I have entered into my template. It's basically telling me I'm in a pretty good state. In total, I'm investing about the right amount of money on promotional investment. I may not be allocating it particularly well, and there may be still more efficiencies to get if we were to allocate that money to the products a little differently, so there might be more to gain. But as a number in total, we're kind of in the right place for our promotional investment, and that's very good to know. So looking through some of the details, you see I have individual products that are into 500, 600, 700% ROIs, and if I'm looking down here, Certrum, well, that's not looking too good in the future years. Look, I've got less than 100% long-term return. I'm definitely making a loss on those products, and I probably need to invest a little bit, well, definitely need to invest a little bit less on that particular product. So there we go. This is the promotional return on investment. There's quite a lot to understand about that, but this is a very important figure and helps us qualify and assess the current quality of your promotional plan. So that's it, promotional ROI.